The second film I'll be reviewing in my Lincoln on-screen retrospective leading up to the release of Steven Spielberg's film Lincoln this December is going to be the classic movie Young Mr. Lincoln, directed by John Ford and released in the year 1939. John Ford is, of course, one of the great American film directors, and Abraham Lincoln one of the great American historical figures. Add to this Henry Fonda, one of my favorite actors of all time, and you have everything necessary to make something great. And this time, unlike the D.W. Griffith movie that I reviewed in the previous video, the result is a resounding success. This was actually the first time that Henry Fonda and John Ford worked together, and they must have gotten along well because they eventually made, I think, 10 more movies together. Henry Fonda actually had to be convinced to take this part, even though Ford is a very well-established director at that point. Henry Fonda was hesitant to take the role of Abraham Lincoln in Young Mr. Lincoln because he didn't think he was really up to the task of playing such a great man, and he also knew that he didn't really resemble Lincoln at all. John Ford convinced him to take the part because he didn't plan on portraying Abraham Lincoln as kind of a great man, kind of destined for glory sort of character. He wanted to play him as a young, rough-and-tumble lawyer, and after doing a screen test with Henry Fonda, in full makeup, full costumes, Fonda actually was finally convinced that this was a part that he could play, and he plays it very well. The physical resemblance is pretty negligible, but what Fonda ends up doing in his performance in this movie is to capture the spirit of Abraham Lincoln from all the gangly kind of awkwardness, the self-deprecating humor, and just the strong sense of moral and intellectual center of him. He brings this into his character from the inside out. You buy him completely as Abraham Lincoln from his very first scene.
I tell you that Andrew Jackson, that great volcano at Washington, is belching forth a lava of political corruption which is sweeping over the length and breadth of this land, leaving unscathed no green spot, no living thing. Sangamon County, take warning. Send me, John T. Stewart, back to the legislature, and I'll see that every Jackson man in office is whipped out of the place like a dog out of a meat house. And now, my friends, I bow to one of your own citizens of New Salem, who will address you further on behalf of the great and incorruptible Whig Party. God bless it.
Gentlemen and fellow citizens, I presume you all know who I am. I'm plain Abraham Lincoln. I've been solicited by many friends to become a candidate for the legislature. My politics are short and sweet, like the old woman's dance. I'm in favor of a national bank, the internal improvement system, and high protective tariff. These are my sentiments and political principles. If elected, I shall be thankful. If not, it'll be all the same.
However, as good as Henry Fonda's performance is as Abraham Lincoln, if you're looking to this movie in terms of historical accuracy, there's really not a whole lot to write home about. The movie does get some stuff right historically. In that clip you just saw, the political views of Abraham Lincoln at the time the movie is set were pretty accurate. He supported the National Bank. He was opposed to some of the policies of Andrew Jackson. But aside from that, there's really not a whole lot of accuracy in this thing. The basic plot of the movie is taken very loosely from the pages of history. It's based upon Lincoln's successful defense of the murder suspect named William Duff Armstrong, but That was in 1958, after he had been a very successful railroad attorney for a long time, rather than taking place in the 1830s and portraying Lincoln as a rookie lawyer and a failed congressman. But I think that studying the movie as it does in the realm of historical fiction really works to the movie's benefit. As you saw in the D.W. Griffith film that I reviewed, a movie that wants to be historically accurate could be tempted to shoehorn in way too much historical material, and having so much stuff to look at can cause you to sometimes sacrifice depth and analysis, and eventually amounts to a whole bunch of historical hors d'oeuvres. A movie like Young Mr. Lincoln, on the other hand, by taking the freedom of fiction rather than trying to go with documentary fact, allows itself to look at Lincoln as a person, as a young man, and how experiences he might have had when he was younger in his formative years could shape him into the great man who he would later become. I could imagine somebody like Tom Stoppard would use a film like Young Mr. Lincoln as inspiration when he started to write the screenplay for his own film, Shakespeare in Love. In terms of plot, the film doesn't really have much of a plot for the first couple of acts. It shows Lincoln gaining interest in law, briefly covers his tragic romance with Anne Rutledge, and later shows him working at a law firm with his friend John T. Stewart, who was a political opponent of Stephen Douglas. Then there's a nice scene showing that being a lawyer isn't all about fiery courtroom battles, where it shows Lincoln trying to mediate a settlement between a couple of his clients.
That's a lie. I can prove it, I tell you, I can prove it. Go ahead and prove it. I got the law on my side, I'll show you. Get him, you darn thief.
Gentlemen, just hold your horses and sit down. Now, Brother Woolridge.
That's it.
Brother Hawthorne here says you agreed to furnish him 2 yokes of oxen to break up 20 acres of prairie side ground.
He did such.
And that you were to allow him to raise a crop of corn on another piece of land.
That's right. But he never done one thing he promised. Not one.
Now, it says here, Brother Hawthorne, that you owe Brother Woolridge $55.47 board at the rate of $1.50 a week. And you owe him $90 for use of a team and wagon for 8 months, besides $100 cash on a loan.
Yeah. No, I never said I didn't.
Now, a different director might have tried to pump up the drama in that scene, perhaps to try to make a parallel between that and what Lincoln would later do during the Civil War, with trying to reconcile two different sides. But John Ford just kind of lets the scene play out and speak for itself. And that sort of restraint is held constantly throughout the beginning of the movie and a good portion of the rest of it. See, John Ford as a director is often accused of being over-sentimental, and in this movie, he doesn't really fall into sentimentality until the movie actually starts to have a plot. Plot is kind of standard crime stuff. Two brothers are seen fighting with a man after a 4th of July parade. The man ends up dying, and they're trying to figure out which brother is the one who killed them. Both of them take the rap for it, not wanting the other one to be arrested and executed for the crime. But instead, since they both claim to be doing it, they're both arrested and both ready to be put on trial. And Lincoln volunteers to be their attorney, partially because he's never had a high-profile client before, and also partially because their mother reminds him a lot of his own mother, who, of course, died when he was very young. But still, the scenes where he decides to defend the two brothers leads up to one of the very best scenes in the movie, where Lincoln single-handedly talks down a lynch mob who is trying to hang the two brothers.
I said, listen to me. By gee, you will. Now, gentlemen, I'm not up here to make any speeches. All I got to say is I can lick any man here, hands down. Come on, man! Come on! We gotta let them stand their way! Hold on, Beck. I thought I'd find that big mouth of yours around here telling people what to do.
I'm Big Buck, all right. I'm the biggest buck in this lick.
Well, come on up and wet your horns. What's the horn?
Ain't gonna move? Get away, Lincoln. We're coming through.
All joking aside, let's look at this matter from my side. Why, you all know I'm just a fresh lawyer trying to get ahead. But some of you boys act like you want to do me out of my first clients. I'm not saying you fellas are not right. Maybe these boys do deserve to hang. But with me handling their case, don't look like you'll have much to worry about on that score. All I'm asking is to have it done with some legal pomp and show.
That's all right. Absolutely right. On our side of it. We've gone to a heap of trouble not to have at least one hanging.
Sure you have, Mac. And if these boys had more than one life, I'd say go ahead. Maybe a little hanging mightn't do them any harm. But the sort of hanging you boys would give them would be so permanent. Trouble is, when men start taking the law into their own hands, they're just zapped in all the confusion and fun to start hanging somebody who's not a murderer as somebody who is. And the next thing you know, they're hanging one another just for fun. Till it gets to a place a man can't pass a tree or look at a rope without feeling uneasy.
Another very interesting part of this movie is the way that they characterize the different characters and their classes. I mean, even though this movie is set in the 1830s, Abraham Lincoln and other people of the middle and lower classes have a very contemporary way of speaking. It's only the upper class people, the high-powered politicians, the wealthy lawyers, the prestigious people who kind of speak in that flowery, upper crust, formal way of speaking that you might expect from movies set in the 19th century. I think that the reason that John Ford and his screenwriter Lamar Trotty did this is to give us an idea of just how populist Abraham Lincoln was, the way he was able to connect with the middle and lower classes and gain their support as a lawyer and later as a politician. It was a really smart decision by them. Well, anyway, the courtroom scenes in Young Mr. Lincoln are pretty standard stuff for the genre, but they're played with lots of humor and energy from Henry Fonda, and John Ford just keeps them clipping along. It's a very well-paced section of the movie. Yeah, the way the trial unfolds is pretty unlikely and almost certainly unsound illegally. Lincoln does some courtroom antics here that would make Matlock blush. Well, but we can kind of accept this because A, it's the 1830s, and B, Lincoln is a very amateur lawyer. This is his first real time in the courtroom, so we can expect that he wouldn't know all the rules completely. Yeah. And after the trial's over and the brothers get off, I don't think I'm surprising anybody by saying that, we come to the famous conclusion where Lincoln goes walking up a hill in triumph, but then thunder claps, and a storm comes down, which is of course meant to foreshadow the many troubles to come. And as he walks off into the thundering rain, the image dissolves into a picture of the Lincoln Memorial, all lit up in glory. The sentimental? You bet it's sentimental, but it doesn't stop it from also being extremely moving. Young Mr. Lincoln is a very deserved classic, with strong performances, a witty and smart script, and a good sense of place and time. It's also very interesting to view if you're a fan of John Ford and Henry Fonda and would like to see where their relationship started. Check it out if you can. There's a terrific DVD from the Criterion Collection. Now, as far as trivia goes, this is the only time, not counting a radio adaptation that happened later that year for the radio show Academy Award Theater, where Henry Fonda played Lincoln, but he did end up playing fictional U.S. presidents quite a bit in movies like Fail Safe and Meteor, during the 1970s and 60s when there were lots of all-star disaster movies going on. John Ford, on the other hand, he had a long and varied history with Abraham Lincoln as a character. His feature-length debut in the year 1924 was a silent western entitled The Iron Horse, about the development of a railroad, in which Lincoln had a brief appearance. 3 years before Young Mr. Lincoln was made, Ford directed The Prisoner of Shark Island, a biopic of Dr. Samuel Mudd, who was unjustly imprisoned after treating the leg of John Wilkes Booth following the assassination of Lincoln. And later, Ford would direct the Civil War segment of the epic western How the West Was Won, which featured Raymond Massey, one of his many appearances as Abraham Lincoln. But that is a performance we cannot talk about until next time, when we look at what is perhaps the most definitive screen portrayal of Lincoln, as of now, Raymond Massey's performance in the film Abe Lincoln in Illinois. And until that time comes, thanks for watching.